Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter. Thank you for tuning into our channel, Goldilocks Global Banking News. Everybody knows that Goldilocks is the number one source for the RVGCR. People from around the world tune in to see what Goldilocks is sharing on the RVGCR. Don't miss your chance and get your latest updates every day. So like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get your daily podcast from the Goldilocks articles on the RVGCR. Brought to you by Freedom Fighter. Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter, and welcome to Goldilocks Global Banking News. I'm your host. Fine folks, today Goldilocks is sharing more information we know you should be aware of what happened on Tuesday, October the 7th, whereby Vietnam, their stock market was officially upgraded to an emerging market status. More and more information now coming out in the public. Reports of the effect of that, and there will continue to be more coming out in favor of Vietnam and the Vietnamese Dong in time. Let's jump right into what Goldilocks is sharing today. Now, this is one of the benefits, which are many, of the upgrade of Vietnam's stock market, particularly now with the World Trade Organization in Vietnam. Vietnam's completion of the World Trade Organization notification on rules of origin contributes to encouraging the upgrade of its emerging market status because it demonstrates compliance with international trade standards, enhancing transparency and building investor confidence through proactive global cooperation. This is directly connected to and affects the Vietnamese Dong. Yes, Vietnam has been a member of the World Trade Organization. However, with the recent upgrade by the FTSE Russell to an emerging market, it now changes the dynamics of the relationship between Vietnam and the members, which are countries around the world, members of the World Trade Organization, because this involves how Vietnam does trade with these other countries that are also members of the World Trade Organization. This aligns, Goldilocks is stating, with broader efforts to protect Vietnamese goods' reputation amid stricter importer rules from major markets and countries like the U.S. and the European Union and many others. This facilitates smoother access to tariff preferences under free trade agreements and positioning Vietnam as a reliable player in global supply chains. This, folks, with Vietnam being upgraded to an emerging market, it gives Vietnam, in the eyes of countries around the world who they do trade with and will be trading in the Vietnamese Dong with, this is the reclassification of their stock market by the FTSE Russell. It's graduation, coming out party, if you will, of Vietnam moving up with the big boys in the world. The World Trade Organization members, folks, when I say that, I'm talking about China, the U.S., many countries around the world, the big players, big, small, and medium sized in the WTO. But when the World Trade Organization members, they have recognized now Vietnam's responsible role which supports its economic integration and potential for market classification improvements by the Morgan Stanley Compute Index and the FTSE Russell. As fulfilling such obligations signals strong institutional reforms and trade facilitation. See, Goldilocks, for the last 6 years, over 3,500 times, we actually went back and saw the history. Over 3,500 times, Goldilocks mentioned the importance of trade and how the revaluation of currencies will happen through trade. This is why Goldilocks coined the phrase, watch the water, because where's trade done, folks? On the water. Many of you have been told many different things. I'll just say this. As we await the most recent update for Iraq and their fourth working party meeting with the World Trade Organization, oftentimes people just hear a title, World Trade Organization. But what's the second name in that title? World Trade Organization? See, some of us may have glossed over, didn't pay attention to the World Trade Organization and just, Iraq needs that to RV, so I'm gonna get my exchange, my money, I'm gonna hurry and get it, because Iraq, we gotta watch for them to join the World Trade Organization. What's the trigger? What needs to happen for the RV to happen? What is it? And many of you were told about the World Trade Organization, but did you know what the World Trade Organization was about? For those that have been following Goldilocks, you've heard it many times. Over the last 6 years, over 3,500 articles, over 3,500 articles by Goldilocks related to the RV, talking about the need of trade, whereby countries exchange their goods and services amongst each other. Where? On the water. As we've shown in the leak by the Trump administration from last April, currency revaluation is likely to be a priority of the second Trump administration, large in part to the overvaluing of the U.S. dollar, contributing to the trade deficit. Goldilocks continues by stating and quoting, as the end of September, total credit to the national economy in Vietnam has risen almost 14% compared to last year at the same time. This accounts for the highest growth in Vietnam in 15 years. At this pace, the State Bank of Vietnam, which is the central bank of Vietnam, expects full-year credit growth to reach 19 to 20%. This is where, folks, the credit of the Vietnamese dong has become so strong that countries can buy the dong on credit. You mean they can finance projects and finance different things on credit because the dong is going to be so strong? Yes. So Vietnam can even utilize their strong credit. Just think of your credit rating. Vietnam, especially with the production and the upgrade of their stock market, Vietnam is the equivalent of let's say a 700 plus credit score. Once they get the MSCI classification next year or the year after, whenever it may be, it's the equivalent of moving to an 800 credit score. But as of right now, their strength in credit and their credibility has grown exponentially in the last several years, especially with the reforms that they've implemented that were necessary to even be accepted and reclassified as an emerging market by the FTSE Russell. This strengthens the Vietnamese dong, supports higher interest rates, improves trade balances. Then Goldilocks is sharing that Vietnam, just speaking of reforms, they just introduced a reform into law for their crypto exchange licensing. Folks, what will back our currencies and move our physical paper currencies in the new digital banking system? Cryptos. What are cryptos? Digital assets. Vietnam just implemented a new reform issued on September the 9th, whereby it's called Resolution 05/25. And it marks Vietnam's debut in formally regulating crypto exchanges. Think of digital asset exchanges in a 5-year pilot program. This builds directly on the June digital technology industry law that they implemented. More reforms. This is the first classified digital assets as ownable property under the civil code in Vietnam. Think of this. Folks, you may be listening to this and you may be saying to yourself, that's going over my head. I don't understand that technical jargon that freedom fighter is quoting by Goldilocks. Each and every one of you who have invested in this opportunity, you have what it takes, even at a base level, to understand this. What you at least can understand, it's directly connected to the Vietnamese dong and the value of it and the increasing of its rate. So if you dismiss it, you may miss something. If you at least pause for a moment and continue to listen, there may be something that you hear that's a golden nugget or even a light bulb that goes off. Because once a light bulb goes off in your head, you ever notice how more light bulbs go off? It's like the veil has been lifted and your eyes have been opened to a new, greater possibilities. They're just newer to you, but those same possibilities existed to others who already experienced that light going off. Why not this be your turn? Why not now? Goldilocks is continuing that there are key elements. Pay attention. There are key elements to the reforms that Vietnam has just implemented for digital assets and crypto. The licensing process. Vietnam, ladies and gentlemen, just made it a lot easier for crypto exchanges, for businesses to acquire the licenses to participate in their stock exchange, which is directly connected to their stock market that was just upgraded to an emerging market status. Goldilocks is stating that although this is not a full green light, but a controlled experiment echoing Singapore and Hong Kong sandboxes, this signals to the world that Vietnam is prepared and ready with the reforms to play with the big boys and gals in the world who have these massive big economies like the US and China and others. Vietnam has the money mechanics, the reforms, the support, the numbers, the success of their economy to ultimately support increased value in the Vietnamese dong. There are many, many, many factors, ladies and gentlemen, that come into play in order for a country's currency to move up in rate. There are more factors involved for a country's currency to go up than it is to go down. There has never been and never will be just one or two things that will be the reason for a country's currency to spike up. It doesn't work that way. The only place where that works for a country's currency to just RV and go up is in fairy tale land. That's the place where the guru fufu resides, and the gurus who live there and live rent free in your head. Beautiful folks, do not let that be you. It's time for you to break out and move away from that fairy tale land that you've been living in rent free for the last several months or years, and still you have nothing but anxiety to show for your rent-free payments. Some of you been paying, not rent-free. Some of you been paying for that emptiness that you've gotten. Use the God-given abilities that you all have and you were born with, and your best days will be ahead in this blessing that God has waiting for you. We love you, folks, with the most unconditional love you can imagine. Be well.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter. Thank you for tuning into our channel, Goldilocks Global Banking News. Everybody knows that Goldilocks is the #1 source for the RVGCR. People from around the world tune in to see what Goldilocks is sharing on the RVGCR. Don't miss your chance and get your latest updates every day. So like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get your daily podcast from the Goldilocks articles on the RVGCR. Brought to you by Freedom Fighter.